These two men, Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, lied, cheated, killed people, destroyed communities, all in pursuit of economic power. They were known as the robber barons of capitalism, and they hated that. So they set about changing their image. They wanted people to forget about all the terrible things they did. So Carnegie built public libraries. Rockefeller set up foundations. They found a way to con the establishment into moving on. And that's what we're seeing today with these two. Bush and Biden want you to forget about what they did. They're desperate for praise and pats on the back from the establishment, but unlike the original robber barons, who at least did some good with their deflection tactics, from Bush and Biden, it is entirely negative. In the past few days, they have cynically come together to attack a common enemy, Republicans. Disgracefully, George W. Bush used the anniversary of 9/11 to imply that Republicans, the people who put him in the Oval Office, are like the 9/11 terrorists. And no, he didn't just mean those who committed crimes. Bush knew perfectly well how his remarks would be amplified. He intended to smear the Republican base. What a sick, cynical, transparently self-interested ploy to ingratiate himself with the media and the political establishment. Does Bush really think it's going to make Americans forget what he did? Instead, it's done the exact opposite. It prompts us to remember that George W. Bush let Osama bin Laden slip through his fingers in December 2001 because Bush was too busy dialing up plans for the invasion of Iraq. We remember that Bush took us to war in Iraq on a lie, and according to those around him at the time, he did it just to look tougher than his father, an actual war hero. We remember that Bush's war of vanity squandered the sympathy and unity of the civilized world after 9/11. We remember, we will never forget, however many portraits he paints or speeches he makes, sucking up to the establishment and its elitist groupthink. We will never forget that George W. Bush caused the death of millions needlessly, that he destabilized the Middle East pointlessly, that he took trillions of dollars of your money corruptly and put it in the pockets of his cronies, led, of course, by the Cheneys, whose family business is war, fought by other people and their children. Biden said he wanted to end a war, not just overseas, but here at home.
We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal.
Well, just as his abject surrender to the Taliban has not stopped but restarted the endless war as Afghanistan once again becomes a safe haven for terrorists, Biden is not ending our uncivil war, but reviving it. He picks a fight over the pandemic, hoping we'll forget about the chaos he created at the southern border, the humanitarian crisis, the security crisis, the immigration crisis. He thinks we'll forget about his crime crisis, his inflation crisis. He thinks we'll forget that he was elected on a pledge to bring the country together, and yet every single thing he says or does is designed to drive us further apart. He thinks we'll forget that he was elected as a moderate, a centrist, and yet he's now the front man for the most extreme, far-left, centralizing federal government expansion in American history. Biden thinks we'll forget that he can barely string two sentences together. When he can, they make no sense, even in the moment that he's trying to distract us from his lies and failures.
The bottom line, we're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated co-workers.
What? Protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated? Yeah, it's called a vaccine. Can we just stop for a second and describe accurately what we saw there on Thursday? Either we saw a president who went off script and made something up that directly contradicts science and the stated aims of his administration, or it was in the script and he successfully read it out. In which case we have an entire White House operation that has the President of the United States saying things that contradict science and the stated aims of the administration. This is not a joke, folks. This is a crisis of governance. In the very act of trying to get us to move on, Biden reminds us why we must not. And of course, more than anything, that applies to his greatest catastrophe, his cruel, narcissistic bid to be the guy who stopped the endless war at any cost, whether that's dead Marines in Afghanistan or another 9/11 plotted there, or Americans and our allies stranded behind enemy lines, desperate, fearing for their lives in the hands of those who attacked us 20 years ago. What a grotesque way to commemorate the bravery, the heroism, the sacrifice of so many Americans, not just on that day, but in the 2 decades since. Biden surrendering to the Taliban, leaving our people behind, leaving our military equipment behind, leaving our morality behind. This appalling Biden regime, cruel, weak, incompetent, still can't seem to comprehend the gravity of what they've done. Listen to this from the State Department when challenged about why they're not letting planes take off and getting Americans out. This is an actual official statement released last Sunday. Quote, "We understand the concern that many people are feeling as they try to facilitate further charter and other passage out of Afghanistan. However, we do not have personnel on the ground. We do not have air assets in the country. We do not control the airspace, whether over Afghanistan or elsewhere in the region." Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. You ran away. And now you can't help Americans. And you're talking about it as if it's just some kind of immutable fact of life. No, you took the personnel off the ground. You took the air assets out of the country. You're the ones who did this. And now you turn around and wring your hands about it? You really are the lowest of the low. Or actually, no, there was a lower point. What was the word the White House used to describe the murderous, torturing terrorists they handed Americans over to? Professional. Professional? Here's a word for that. Despicable. Just like their drone strike, a shameless political move straight out of that movie, Wag the Dog. We are now learning the Biden regime mistook water canisters for bombs and killed an aid worker and 9 other civilians. And this is their great over-the-horizon anti-terror strategy. It's not so much over the horizon as somewhere over the rainbow. God help us next time if they're looking at bombs and think they're water canisters. And then they have the nerve to suggest that all this strengthens America because it frees us up to concentrate on the real threat from China. They're right about the threat, but the idea that this weak, feckless Biden regime will ever stand up to China, well, all you need to know about that is the readout from Biden's phone call with Xi Jinping this week. This is an actual quote from a White House official. Biden sought to explain U.S. actions towards China, quote, in a way that is not misinterpreted as somehow trying to sort of undermine Beijing in particular ways. So that's Biden's strategy on the threat that his whole Afghan disaster was supposed to enable him to protect us from, not somehow sort of undermining Beijing. No wonder there are reports that China is taking over Bagram, the strategic asset that Biden just gave up overnight. Biden is totally out of his depth. He is nothing but a corrupt machine politician with no principles, no integrity, no decency. His entire presidency is a fraud. He said he'd bring compassion, but instead gave us cruelty. He promised competence, but delivered chaos. He was elected as a moderate centrist, but the minute he's sworn in, it's a far-left socialist takeover. He was running around yesterday complaining about the F Biden signs he saw from his convoy. Honestly, considering the damage he's done to this country, that is a mild rebuke. As we said last week, if he won't resign, he must be impeached.